Hallelujah. So, watch what's going on. Verse 33, they and all that appertained to them went down alive into the pit, and the earth closed upon them, and they perished from among the congregation. And all Israel that were round about them fled at the cry of them, for they said, lest the earth swallow us up also. So, we're going to stop there. So we see what's happening. Korah, Dathan, Abram, and the 250 men that came up against Moshe, they didn't only put their lives in danger, they put the lives of their wives, sons, daughters, granddaughters, grandsons. Everything that appertaineth unto them was put into jeopardy because of these wicked men here. It is very important that we follow order, that we follow the Torah, and just like the Mashiyach said, whoever that does not want me to rule over them, bring that person before me and slay that person. The Father is not playing. What we're going to do here at the congregation of Yashra'al is make sure that everybody understands what is their role and what is their responsibility. This is not the type of walk that you can go into and then, well, today or this week I don't feel like it, so I'm not even going to come to the classes. It is very important for us to even come to the congregation, to the classes. Very important. It's important for us to assemble together. When you're not here, you're missed. We have it so easy here at the congregation of Yashra'al. If you're not going to be here, just give a call and say, listen, you know what, I'm not going to be able to make it. Nobody's going to question you why you're not going to be able to make it. It's just that easy. This is a family, a commitment. Because you can't not show up to your job and then just walk up into your job the next day all willy-nilly like nothing happened. Why can't we have that same type of love and responsibility towards one another?
That's right.
And watch how easy it is for the congregation of Yashra'al. If you're going to be late, call. I'm going to be late. You're not going to be able to make it this Shabbat? Listen, you know what? Listen, I'm not going to be in Shabbat. The ladies know to call Korah. The brothers know to call myself, Zakane, or Zakar. And nobody's going to drill you. Nobody. It's just that love and that compassion, because when Zakane is not here, then who is supposed to now be acting on his behalf? Who's going to now do the camera work? If Korah's not here, who's going to now serve the food? If Hezekiel is not here, he prays a lot. So who's going to now do the ministering with the prayers? So every single body here is needed. And what we're going to start doing now is allotting positions for everybody. Somebody needs to put up the tables. When the sisters go out, especially when the time begins to change, what if a sister now needs to go out to the car? We would need a brother set up now to escort that sister to the car because it's now dark outside. Because this is how our family works. Because whether you know it or not, it's not safe for our sisters to be walking up and down the street alone at night or even throughout the day.
That's right.
So this whole thing with this black feminist movement and I can do my own thing and you don't tell me what to do, there's a lot of women that are being snatched up. If you're not under this umbrella, and if you don't want to follow Torah, the hedge is now off of you, and anything can happen to you from there. You better be careful. I'm telling everybody that. You better be careful, because this is not church. We are all responsible for one another here in the congregation of Yashra'al. All right. Let's get into today's lesson. I just want to do that as an encore, but we're going to flow through the rest of the scriptures hopefully real easy. If anybody have any questions, please do so. But we're going to talk about when does a day begin? All right, when does a day begin? Let's try and unravel the great mystery. When did time begin? Now, we're going to go into a little science a little bit here to prove some facts of the father of of Yahuah. This right here is going to be very, very important. The Father's name. We have the Yod, the Hey, Hu, the Hey. That's in the ancient Hebrew, the Paleo, and in the modern Aramaic, we have the Yod, Hey, we have the Hu, Hey. So we get into how the pronunciation in another lesson. So we want to talk about that a little bit. Okay, Mishpachah. Science so far has shown 3 stages of darkness. Again, science has shown 3 stages of darkness. The first stage is before light. All right? Before light. Before energy. Before matter. So before all these things needed to be created. Light needed to be created. Energy needed to be created, and matter needed to be created. The second stage is before time, before space, before place. Let me write some of this down. So even those on TV land and YouTube can get some of the gist of this here. So we're talking about before light, before light, before energy, and before matter. The second stage is before time, because time had to be created, because the time that's here on this planet Earth is not the same time that the Father's operating on in Shamayim. And just to prove that, the biggest planet that we know in this solar system is, anybody know? Jupiter, right. And so when we look at now rotation and time, the bigger the object is, for argument's sake, the longer it takes for the sun to make a rotation. So that means now is that, hypothetically, if it takes, let's say 96 hours for the sun to rotate around Jupiter, but only 24 hours for the sun to rotate around the Earth. So we know that there's a time difference there. All right? So before time, so time had to be created. Before space, space had to be created. And before place, place had to be created. So we have time, space, and place. Before all these things. The third stage that you can find in any science book, you have before the human body, because the human body had to be created. Before the ruach, before the soul, or the nefesh, before the spirit. And what's happening now is that the way that I prove this, we'll be here all day and I'm not going to do that. The Father created the light. All of this can be explained in the book of Genesis, the first chapter, verses 1 through, I think, about maybe like 15 or something like that. Where it begins to talk about all these things. It begins to talk about the light, energy, matter. So we talk about the energy we're talking about in school. I'm sure Solomon can probably shed some light on this. At one time, back in the old days, put it this way, back in the old days when I was going to school, they taught us that the smallest cell here was the atom. But come to find out now through research now, they was able to now break down the atom, and now we have what we call quarks. They said that quarks can be broken down, where we now have biaps. And all of these are energies, or some people might call subatomic energies. And then, we have the matter, and the matter is just basically where we have like our krypton, our neons, and those things here. So all of these things are very, very important now. The atoms, all these things here now in order for life to exist. So in order to make the planet a habitable planet to live, these things we needed to have these things, just like with oxygen. The main thing that's in the atmosphere today to help us to breathe is not oxygen. It's actually now the nitrogen. So what makes up the oxygen is the nitrogen, the oxygen, and we have argon. These things here makes up what we call oxygen, what we're breathing today. So the Father is like a chemist. He's the grand architect. In order for us to live, to breathe, to exist, all these things needed to come into play, but they needed to be created. And then we get to the point where we're talking about time. The Father's time is not our time. The Father does time is a day to the Father is what?
1,000 years.
1,000 years. We're not operating on the same wavelength here. Space. We begin to talk about space. It always talks about in science how the universe is constantly growing, and how it's like the universe is like it's folding and it's bending. We have black holes. We have there's a lot of things that's going there, and then all these things needed to be put into order now, where we now have a particular place. They say that the Earth is the third planet away from the sun. They say that the sun, the distance from the Earth to the sun is so strategically placed where if the Earth was the second planet from the sun, there would be no life. The Father is the grand architect. Then we begin to talk about the human body. It's made up of cells, up top of cells, up top of cells. And I'm sure Koti Kathy, when she took up anatomy, the body is a very beautiful, it's like a machine almost. I mean, we have blood cells, we have tissues, we have organs, cells, all these things here that composes the body. The heart, all these things, the left ventricle, the right ventricle, we have the aorta, how the blood pumps, all this stuff that's going on, and there's oxygen inside of the blood, all this stuff. And then when we see the creation story, the Father said, you know what, that's not good enough. What I need to now is give this man these two things here, a soul and a spirit, in order for him now to be an animated being where he can now actually function properly in Torah. So these are the three stages: your light, energy, matter, time, space, place, body, soul, spirit. All these things needed to be now placed in this proper order before there was creation. All right? So I'm going to try to go through this real quick, Mishpachah, so that we can get up out of here, and we can just try to hold back the questions a little bit later. Now, off the bat, I'm going to let everybody know, my argument now is that the day actually begins in the evening. It does not begin at midnight. It does not begin at morning. And I'm going to try to share with you some of that. It can't be done in one class. So I'll come back next week and try to finish it up. But some of my arguments, the reason why, according to Scripture, and I'm going to show some scriptures here, the reason why it begins at nightfall or at the evening when the sun falls below the horizon is, let's go to the first book of Kings, 8 and 12. The first book of Kings, the first book of Kings, 8 and 12. It says, then spoke Solomon. Yahuah said that he will dwell in thick darkness. All right? Thick darkness. Now, This darkness here now isn't the same darkness. Remember it said and the earth was tohu and bohu, and there was darkness upon the face of the earth? It's not talking about that kind of darkness. This darkness here is the Strong's number, it is 6205. Look at the definition. The word here now is not koshek. It's ar-pharel. It has araphel. It means cloud, heavy, or dark cloud. It means darkness, gross darkness, thick darkness. Now, when we begin to look at the creation, there's a type of darkness where it's silent. We can only imagine it. There's been movies like The Outer Limits, when the best way that I can describe it is based upon what I've read about it when I took up chemistry in high school, and some of the books that Mashiyach she has laying around, because I love reading nursery books. It's a lot of science books. We're talking about the type of darkness where, the best way to describe it, have you ever been in a place where it's been so quiet, where it's noisy, where you can actually hear the atoms and things popping, you can hear chemistry, you can hear the atoms. It's talked about in a lot of National Geographics. I like reading those books too, and it also comes up on TV, where it talks about you can go so deep below sea level where it is so dark. It's a pitch darkness where it's not the type of darkness where you cut all the lights off in your room and at some point your eyes can make a focus, but this type of darkness is
oblivion.
Yeah, they just can't explain it. Unimaginable. And so when scriptures begin to talk about a thick darkness, a gross darkness, this lets us know now is that we're talking about a realm or a dimension that we're not familiar with. So we're talking about, because scripture do talk about different levels or different planes of Shamayim or heaven, and where certain messengers of Yahuah actually dwell. So I'll just leave it there for now. But again, this darkness isn't the word koshek. It's the Strong's number 6205. This definition gives cloud, heavy or dark cloud, darkness, gross darkness, a thick darkness. Now let's go to the book of Shemot, because it says now that the father of Yahuah dwells in this thick, gross darkness. We can't go there. We can't go there. They even talk about, notice now, when we talk about dimensions and leaving this terrain, when the astronaut goes to the moon, and now, listen, he's never gone to the moon. That's not what we're doing here, all right? All right? He didn't go. Let's be doing the safe way. I see the ship go up. I don't know where it went. They said it went to the moon. I just want to testify to this. Wherever they went, all right, they went to New Zealand or whatever. It is documented, though, was that when they come back here, that they need special medications, because what happens now is that their body needs to get adjusted because they left one terrain and they're now coming back to this terrain. A lot of them can't even walk. And they said it's like 10 times more intense when you get on the airplane, and especially a jet. You might get jet lag once you get on the ground. When I went to Israel, being up in the air for so long, it got to the point where I was like, listen, you know what? I mean, seriously, I almost panicked, because you're in a chair like this, and you're going to be up in the air for 8-9 hours, and you're just looking out the window, and you're like, listen, you know what? I'm ready to get down now. I mean, it really starts to mess with you a little bit. I don't know if it started to bother you, because it's so tight.
Yeah, you got to get up and move around.
Yeah.
Probably even more than that when you're cruising, because the circulation, and especially like for people who have poor circulation, or they may not as fit as they maybe could be. Like if your circulation is impeded already here at this level, when you're up there, your circulation is definitely going to be harder for your blood vessels and stuff to go through.
It has started to mess with you. It has started to mess with you. And I'm a decent sized guy, all right? And people there, they're not as big. And so I'm like this, and the woman was like, oh, sir, you're a pretty big guy, and, can you move your arm over a little bit? So it just got to that point where it got almost like claustrophobic. I mean, almost like, because I don't like going into like CAT scans. That bothers me, because you're in this closed space, and they got you strapped down, and you hear this humming noise like for the next 20 minutes. And I remember I was in a CAT scan, and because I hurt my back. And I told the woman, I said, listen, you know what? You got 5 minutes. You got 5 more minutes, all right? I'm coming up out of here. I just can't. But again, I'm just trying to share with you now what happens now when you're in an enclosed area. So get back to the point here. So again, the Father dwells in this thick darkness. All right, this thick darkness here. Let's go to the book of Exodus, or the book of Shemot, the 20th chapter, verse 21. Let me speed this thing up here now, because I want to get off this topic here. But that plane ride. Whew. Exodus 20:21. And the Father said unto Moshe, thus shalt thou say unto the children of Yashra'al, 20:21, excuse me. And the people stood afar off, and Moses drew near into the thick darkness where Elohim was. So it's the same Strong's number 6205, and I'm just trying to share all the scriptures where it's talking about where the Father now is actually now dwelling in this thick darkness. Let's go to the book of Jeremiah 13:16. Jeremiah 13:16. Let's get he's leaving out. Let's get Shalach Yahuah. Abad Yahuah. I'm itching. Jeremiah the 13th chapter, Shalach, please. 13:16. Oh, Shalach again. Shalach. Abad, excuse me, Abad, please, Abad. 13:16, excuse me.
Give esteem to Yahuah your Elohim, for before he causes darkness, and before your feet stumble upon the dark mountains, and while you look for light, he turned it into the shadow of death, and make it gross darkness.
Now watch this, Mr. Todd. Watch this. We have a lot of words being said here. Okay? Let's see if I can get it a little bit faster. 13:16, right? 13. Okay. The Father we're going to give esteem to his name, Elohim, before he calls darkness. That darkness there now is the Strong number 2821. It is the Hebrew word kashach, or koshek. And it means to be or become dark. To be or become dark. To grow dim, be darkened, be black, be hidden. So we have like a mixing. And we get into this a little bit later. When does the Shabbat end? Being that we see that it's evening, we now have what we call a mixing. Okay, a mixing. When it's like the shadow-like hours. And we get into that a little bit later, all right? To make dark, called to be dark, to hide, to conceal, to obscure, to confuse. Now, look at that definition. So, give esteem to the Father Yahuah before he calls darkness, and before your feet stumble upon the dark. That word dark now is the Hebrew word neshef. 53:99. It means twilight. It means evening twilight, morning twilight. The Strong's definition again, it means properly a breeze, that is by implication dusk. When the evening breeze prevails, dark, dawning of the day, night, twilight. All right, so we have two definitions so far. We have a definition for darkness, then we have dark. So again, and before your feet stumble upon the dark mountains, and while you look for light, you look for the light. That Hebrew word is light is or. He turned it into the shadow of death. The word death now is not moot. We have the Hebrew word. Let's see if I can say this long word here now. We have zalamua or zalmavet. Excuse me, zalamet. Vet. Now, this word death means death, shadow, deep darkness. Deep darkness, all right? Shadow of death, deep shadow, and it just goes on. It's talking about a type of distress, extreme danger, dead, a place of the dead. It's a noun, the shadow of death, grave, and so forth. Share that with us. He turned it into the shadow of death and make it gross darkness. All right, so that gross darkness again is the Strong's 6205, and we already talked about that gross darkness. So we have the three stages of these darknesses now. These three stages here now, and the Father of Yahuah tabernacles or dwells there. Now, the book of Bereshit, 1 and 1. 1 and 1. It says, in the beginning, Elohim created. What's going to be interesting here is that, like I said, before all these things, before light, before energy, before matter, before time, space, place, before body, soul, spirit, the Father dwelled in gross darkness. This is where he tabernacled. This is where he dwelled. Now, in the beginning, the word beginning is the Hebrew word resh, as we know. And the next word that we need to pay very close attention to is the word create. Some people have it with an E, and that word is bara. All those things needed to be created, all right? The Hebrew word for create is bara. And the word for beginning is resh. It means head on the beginning or the first.